Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, October 10th, 2019. Here is our top story, 403Bs. What do you and teachers need to know about this retirement plan type? When many of us think about the word retirement, oftentimes we think pensions or 401k, but that's really only half the story. Many of us who work for universities, hospitals, healthcare organizations, and even K-12 public school teachers are more familiar with 403B plans. What is a 403B plan? Well, I'm very pleased to welcome into the program Scott Dauenhauer. He is a certified financial planner, and he's also a consumer advocate when it comes to 403B plans. Scotty, good to talk to you again, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jeffrey?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you. For those who in the audience who may not know, Scott and I have known each other for many, many years. He has been a consumer advocate, not only for K-12 retirement plans, but he has been in the public sector for over 20 years. So we have a long history together of both competitors and peers. So Scott, thanks for joining us. Today we're talking about 403B plans. So before we kind of get into the who and how and the why, some of our audience may not be familiar with this code section. They're not all school teachers or university professors. So would you mind just giving us a short background on what 403B plans are?
Yeah. 403Bs. And by the way, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. This is great. And good to see you as well. 403Bs are actually similar to what the private sector has. They have a 401k. Well, school teachers, healthcare workers, nonprofits, they have a 403B. And most people don't know that the 403B actually preceded the 401k. 403, 1958 is when it first came in. And 401ks didn't come in really till in the 80s, but they didn't really become popular until mid 80s and 90s. So 403B has been around for a long time. And I mainly focus on K-12 public 403B, but you also have it at the university level for nonprofits. You have it at the healthcare, and then pretty much any private nonprofit would be eligible for a 403B as well.
Well done. And I think for the audience's benefit, this is important because it's not just all 401k. There are 403Bs, there's governmental 457s, there are 401As, all these different plan types. And we're not trying to quiz you on code, but it's important to know that there are different code sections attributable to different types of employment. So Scott, you have been doing a lot of work primarily now work in the K through 12. Can you just sum up in a few words, if you can, maybe in 10, 15 words, what it is like currently in the K through 12 school teacher market today?
Well, maybe this will shed some light on it. The key word that we always put on our Twitter posts these days is hashtag 403 Badlands. And the reason for that is it's really a terrible space to be. Teachers have some of the worst retirement plans in the United States, which is ironic because they generally have pretty reasonable pension plans. But when it comes to their defined contribution plans, 403B, 457, they are terrible. Participation rates are terrible. And the products that are sold to teachers are among the most high-cost products sold anywhere in the nation.
And that's a really good point. I want to come back to what you just mentioned in the second part. But it's really important to note here that school teachers do have exceptional pension benefits for the most part in most districts around the country. They participate in usually a state-run retirement system. Scott could tell you more in detail about that. So they work. The pension kind of works hand in hand, and the 403B is oftentimes, I hate this word, is considered a supplemental or sidecar benefit, where the primary benefits the pension plan. Scott, just to kind of kick things off, why your comments? What led you to that? I mean, you've been in the space for a long period of time, a lot of consulting history, but why the kind of the negative, or they are negative comments towards some of these products?
Well, I got into this 403B industry there's sort of an interesting way. All the way back in, I think it was 1998, my wife started teaching. And so she started teaching in Southern California, and a gentleman walked into her classroom and said, I was sent by the school district and the California State Teachers Retirement System, and I'm here to explain your retirement benefits. Well, my wife was like, oh, well, my husband, this is what he does for a living. I'm sure he'd like to sit in on this conversation. So she called me up and we kind of rescheduled a time and came down. And I didn't know anything about CalSTRS, California State Teachers Retirement System, at that time. I didn't know much at all about 403Bs. I just knew that teachers had them, but I knew almost nothing. I was very familiar with 401ks. So when we sat down, I was really interested to hear about these programs. Less than 3 minutes into the conversation, I realized this guy hadn't been sent by the school district or CalSTRS. He was an indexed annuity sales agent. And this is over 20 years ago, when indexed annuities were just becoming, were really new products. So that was kind of the first I'd heard of these indexed annuities. But I immediately realized that he was a salesperson. I'm like, how did this guy even get on campus? This is kind of bizarre. So I asked him to leave, called the school district, said, hey, why are you allowing these people on your campus who are lying to your teachers? And they just said, oh, that's just the way it is. This is 21 years ago. It hasn't changed a lot since. And so I just said, forget it. I'm not going to start a 403B. This is ridiculous. But then a couple months later, a colleague of my wife's who had also been sold an indexed annuity asked me to review it. And what I found was a 20-year surrender period on that product. Wow. With an 18% surrender charge. And she had been led to believe it would return anywhere from 10 to 12% a year, which it's just not going to. I mean, after I was done looking at it, I think she would have been lucky to get 2% a year, even if the markets were up 10. And that's when I started my journey to figure out what is going on in this marketplace, and is this normal? From there, I jumped on the internet and found this little website run by a teacher out of Corona, California, which at the time was about 45 minutes from me. Right. Elementary school teacher by the name of Dauenhauer. The website was 403bwise.com. And that's where I started to learn about 403Bs and that it wasn't just something that was local, it was national. These products, these plans nationally were among the worst.
Yeah, I'm not, I guess I'm surprised, not surprised. How do we get from the formation of 403B to this point? I mean, we often talk about on this show, we have people from employee benefits law firms, and we talk about the definition of fiduciary. But Dan, in some cases, that fiduciary term doesn't always apply to these types of plans because some of them are governmental entities.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of the issue. In government K-12 403B plans, there is rarely a fiduciary duty. What's interesting is there usually is a fiduciary duty for government K-12 457 plans. Generally, most states have passed laws for those, and that's because there's a much wider number of employers within the states that can offer the 457. But in 403B, there is generally no fiduciary duty for K-12 public schools. Now, there are nonprofits, it might be in healthcare, nonprofits at the university level, regular nonprofits that might actually be subject to a fiduciary duty via ERISA. But government plans are exempt from ERISA, and I'm sure all our viewers know what ERISA is, but K-12 government 403B plans are completely exempt from ERISA, and I'm unaware of any state that has explicitly passed a fiduciary duty or a fiduciary responsibility for K-12 public 403B plans.
So it sounds like it kind of leads, without that fiduciary duty, which I think folks are familiar with now, there's oversight, the responsibility to make sure that fees are in alignment, that people are doing the best thing on behalf of the participant or beneficiary in the program. Those are all the burdens of being a fiduciary. So it sounds like it's kind of like the Wild West. And I know you're in California. It's not just in California, but it could be in the central part of the country, the eastern part of the country, could be all over. In terms of being a teacher, so if I'm a teacher watching this or listening to this program, what are some of the key takeaways? What can you do as a teacher or administrator or someone working at a school district today to make sure that you're paying the appropriate fees?
Well, that's a little tough because getting disclosure is not simple. Even sending an email to your representative asking them for what the fees are, rarely do you get a response back that actually gives you all the fees. There's a couple things you can do. Here in California, we have a database called 403bcompare.com. Mm-hmm. Now, while it's only specific to California products, a lot of the products distributed in the 403b world nationally actually are on this database. And you can actually go in there, look at your vendor, find your product, and there is some disclosure information. All fees have to be disclosed. So it's a pretty reasonable way to look at it. But one of the biggest trends in 403b over the last decade and going forward is this switch towards selling equity indexed annuities or fixed indexed annuities. And these products come with high surrender charges, long surrender periods generally, and they have a great story. The story is you get the ups of the markets without the downs. I mean, who wouldn't want that? However, the problem with these products is they're often sold as if they are no cost.
Right.
Because they are general account products, there is no explicit fee. The fees are implicit. They are spread products. And so teachers, public school employees, they get easily misled by the people selling these products. And these products have become so popular because they offer the highest commissions of any product that's out there. And that's really what we're trying to work against are those products. But then even then, after that, you get the next most popular product sold is a variable annuity.
Right.
And the fees are explicit in those, and they can range into 3-4% a year, but they're incredibly difficult to decipher, and most teachers have no idea. So what can teachers do? The first thing they could do is call their payroll, find out from their compliance administrator what vendors are available. The crazy thing about 403b is there's generally anywhere from 5, sometimes 60 vendors available in your school district, which is crazy because we usually have one. Look for companies like Vanguard, Fidelity, Aspire, maybe USAA, T. Rowe Price. In California, we have a great program, the CalSTRS Pension 2 program. It's excellent. They're not available outside of California. Look for these low-cost vendors. There's another one called NEA Direct Invest. Generally, the NEA products are terrible, but this is a good one. So if you have security benefit on your approved provider list, you can probably get into that product. That's what I would do. Second thing I would do is I would first go to 403bwise.org and get educated there. There's several books. And by the way, you mentioned Wild Wild West. That's actually the name of my book on 403.
Oh, I had no idea.
It is the Wild Wild West, except at least in the Wild Wild West, generally there was a sheriff. It doesn't seem there's really no sheriff in this
That's true.
crazy world.
That's true. Oh, well, you mentioned a couple things, and I'm not sure the audience may or may not have picked up on it. The term general account. And I just wanted to define that because you have been in those trustee meetings as well as I, and just talking to the average person, they may not understand what a general account is. So would you mind just taking a second just defining that? And then I want to get into the variable annuity discussion real quick.
Yeah, sure. So general account refers to the insurance company where they basically hold all their assets. And in 403b, you can either have an annuity product or a mutual fund product. Right. And within the annuity products, it can either be a fixed annuity or a variable annuity. Fixed annuities are the money is all placed into the general account, what they call the general account of the insurance company. And the insurance company, hopefully they will invest those assets, earn a higher rate of return than they pay out to the participants. And the other difference about your money being in a general account is you do become a creditor of the insurance company if something were to happen, if the insurance company were to become insolvent. So there's a little bit of risk there, which you don't have in a variable product. So you have to pay very close attention to the ratings of the insurance company. I don't know if that was a great definition there.
No, I think you did a great job. I think it's really important, this distinction, for those that are familiar with 401k. You have the access to mutual funds, so you can, and Dan lays out, or excuse me, Scott lays out a couple of companies that may be offering products within your particular district, but then you have these annuities. And annuities by themselves are not necessarily bad things, but they're also not necessarily something for everybody. And that, when we talk on the show, it's about figuring out what your budget is, how much you're going to need in retirement, what type of income you're going to need, right? And then figuring out how you're going to buy if an annuity applies, because there are lots of different ways to get from point A to point Z. But to give everybody all the same product, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think people need to be educated about that and understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. What we see a lot is the agents who are coming into the school districts and selling these products, they have the applications for one product in their bag, ready to go. Teacher just needs to sign on the dotted line. And it's that old adage, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah, just hit away. Well, Scott, I want to go to break. And when we come back, I want to talk about 403bwise.org, because you're not only a CFP and someone who works individually with organizations and people, but you have also partnered with Dan Otter to found this not-for-profit. Very interesting. So stick around, Dan. And when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Scott about 403b plans. In fact, we're going to learn a little bit more about the fees associated with those plans, and then also about a new not-for-profit organization focused on educating Americans about these plans. So stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back, everyone. And so we were chatting about 403b plans with Scott Dauenhauer, and Scott's still with us. Scotty, I want to switch gears. We kind of laid out the level field for everyone to understand the basics of 403b, a little bit different than 401k. But let's talk about this organization, 403bwise.org, because 403bwise.com was a website that you mentioned earlier on. But tell us about the organization.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier on that I got educated by going to 403bwise.com. And I got to know the person who runs that. His name is Dauenhauer. At the time, this is about 20 years ago, he was an elementary school teacher in Corona, California. And one summer, well, after getting on the website and learning all this stuff, it got me really ticked off. I was like, why are teachers of all people the ones who are getting ripped off here? I mean, they already suffer from low pay. Some of them don't have access to Social Security, and then they have low participation rates in products that are terrible. What is going on? So Dan and I got to know each other pretty well, and decided that we should write a book together. So we spent a summer writing a book. This was almost 20 years ago. It was called the 403B Wise Guide. And that led to a lot of speaking engagements across the country. So we've traveled together actually for the last 20 years. That book was it sold really well. And it was kind of the starting point of our I guess our partnership. We have always just kind of done this in our spare time. Dan was full-time as either an elementary school teacher. He eventually ended up getting his doctorate in focusing on financial literacy. He ended up becoming a university professor in New Mexico, and then a couple years ago ended up at University of Redlands. Throughout this entire time period, Dan and I have been working for better laws. We've been advocating on behalf of teachers for better 403B plans. And about 2 years ago, November of 2016, so almost 3 years ago, we had spent a ton of time with the New York Times on an article, actually a series of articles, almost 6 of them, I think it was 6 of them, about the 403B. Yeah. And the headline was, if you think your retirement plan is bad, you should talk to a teacher. And these articles, I can't say they led to a sea change, but they came out right around the election. And so they kind of got lost. Yeah. But a lot of people still saw them, and it piqued the interest of Next Gen Personal Finance. His name is Tim Ranzetta, and this is a nonprofit that is dedicated towards teaching financial literacy in the classroom and providing resources for free to teachers who do financial literacy. Well, he saw this article. He works with thousands of teachers across the nation and thought they need to be informed about this. So for a couple of years, Dan and I stayed in touch with him, and about a year ago, maybe 9 months ago, he said, hey, you should do this full time. And of course, I can't do it full time. I have my own full-time financial planning practice. But he said, Dan, I want you to do this full time. I want you to quit your job at University of Redlands, change 403bwise.com into a nonprofit, and spend all your time advocating on behalf of teachers in the 403B. So,
and I was going to start to interrupt. I was going to say, what's been the response to that conversion? And to Dan, obviously doing it full time, you have more time to advocate and do those things. But what's been the response to that?
Well, so Dan left in June. We relaunched the site in August, and the response has been really good. I serve as the treasurer. I'm a board member. I do not use this organization to get clients. I'm really not taking on many clients these days anyways. But response has been overwhelming. Dan and I have been able to do a lot of traveling. We do a weekly podcast called the Teach and Retire Rich podcast, which is growing every week. We're getting a lot of listeners. We started a Facebook group for teachers, the 403B Wise Facebook page. Teachers can get in, and that's actually been growing like wildfire. It's great because we get a ton of teachers asking these questions, and the most amazing thing is find all these teachers across the U.S. who have figured this out, and they are providing help and answers to other teachers who haven't yet figured it out. And that's really what 403B Wise is about. It's about educating, it's about advocacy, but it's also about building community. What we're trying to do is build this community of teachers and educate them as to what the issues are, and then set them free to fight it. Because Dan and I I mean, there's so many school districts and so many issues. We can't do this alone. So what we're trying to do is empower teachers with the knowledge they need to go out and make change in their own school district.
Yeah, that's empowering people, giving them information, having a sense of community, very important. Let me ask a question. How have these service providers, the record keepers, the product manufacturers, how have they responded? Have they been advocates? Have they gotten in the way? You know, I would think that they would, in some ways, try to partner, because the more people who are knowledgeable, you know, at the end of the day, our show is about saving. So we want to get more people saving. They want to get more people saving. You want to get more people saving. So what's been the reaction from them?
It's been a little mixed. So obviously the lower cost, high quality providers have been super interested in what we're doing, very supportive. We don't take any advertising because we want our message to be free of any potential bias or any bias at all. I mean, when we go out to dinner with a vendor, we pay for our own meals just like we should. So from the lower cost, higher quality vendors, good response. Not so from the vendors that we kind of rail against. They don't like us. They don't want us exposing, you know, their fees. I don't think they're incredibly worried just yet, but I think they need to watch their backs. There's a lot going on right now. I think there'll be more articles coming out. I think there's going to be a lot of sort of shocking revelations that are going on with school teachers and the sales to school teachers. So, yeah, they're not happy with us now, but they're going to be even more unhappy soon.
And I think when you and I connected with each other, New York was looking into some sales practices. So obviously a lot of work to be done. You know, we're not all perfect. I think we have to work towards getting there. Scott, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the program today. And we look forward to coming back and chatting with you. Good luck on the podcast. Good luck on the not-for-profit. And great to hear from you.
Well, thanks for having me on, Jeffrey. This has been great.
Well, folks, that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a financial topic or someone of interest that you think we should interview? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and so much more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.